and welcome to the Bury Me Alive podcast.
I'm your host, Technicality.
And I'm your host, Ghostly. It is good to be back. How are you doing, Cal?
Tired as always.
God damn it, Cal. But yeah, we are very excited to be back. How have you been in the accidentally 3-month hiatus?
Good. I've been doing a lot of camping, spending time with my family.
Weirdo.
I know. It's so
You don't have
horrible.
a family, we don't exist.
Oh. Huh. But then who was I spending time with?
Hallucinations.
Yes.
By the way,
Sorry.
Hi Cal's family. I know some of your family listens to this show, so hi Cal's family. But yeah, we are glad to be back. And today I am in charge of the episode. Mwahaha.
Oh no.
Oh, so evil, I know. And I'm excited because today's episode is another one of what I have finally named Ghostly's Geek Outs. Basically, it's when I just get to talk about a hyperfixation and inform the internet about my thoughts. This one is a bit more on theme for our show. So, are you ready, Cal?
Yep. Let's do this.
Alright. Today's episode is about the show known as Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Do you know what this show is, Cal?
Yeah, you've told me about it before.
I absolutely adore the show. I have seen the entire thing at least 13 times. I've probably seen it closer to 30, but I've seen it a lot. Love the show. I have a shirt from it. And I actually, for Halloween last year, I was actually Yellow Guy from the show. I cosplayed him. And Cal saw me. It was a good cosplay. I enjoyed that one. And this is one of my favorite shows of all time. I would be wearing my Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared hoodie today, but it is 70 degrees in Fahrenheit, so it's too hot for that. And I'm going to be explaining the show and the reason it's scary. So, are you ready?
Yes.
So, to first explain what the show is, I figured the best people to do that are the creators of the show. So I'm going to be reading a interview from the creators of the show. This is from Channel 4, which is where they host the show. The creators are Becky Sloan, Joe Pelling, and Baker Terry. And they were asked how they would describe the show in just 3 words. And the response first was from Joe, "Oh, F off, 3 words. Can't we describe it as just puppets in rooms?" Becky's response was a fun educational nightmare. Joe describes it as kids show for adults. That's 4 words, but we'll let that slide. And then Baker describes the show as a nice puppet show. Puppets, show. Another great one from Joe was colors and sounds. And Becky described it as something to watch. Baker also described it as, what about? Are they puppets? Are they puppets?
Are they?
Which I don't think really answers what the show is about. So I will be giving my explanation as a seasoned Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared fan. The Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is a puppet show. It began as a web series in 2011 on YouTube. Hi, YouTube audience, if you're watching on YouTube. Hi. And it originally started with a short episode which was made back when the creators of the show were in university, and it was about creativity and art. And then they had 6 episodes of that. It was later picked up by Channel 4, which is a British TV service, and it has now had a season run there, which was also 6 episodes. You can binge the entire show in about 3 to 4 hours, and it makes it really easy to watch, but it's not quite easy to watch. We'll get into that in a minute. The show covers 3 friends who don't really have names. Their names are Yellow Guy, who is who I cosplayed as, Red Guy, and Duck. Great set of names. Love the creativity. And in each episode, it is in the style, like, Joe described it as a kid's show for adults. So it's in the style of a kid's show. So think of Sesame Street. And each episode, 3 of them, a teacher will come along and teach them a lesson. So there's an episode about electricity, there's an episode about cooking and food, there's an episode about family, there's an episode about death. The basic topics that one would cover in a kids show.
Mm-hmm.
For the record, this is not a kids show. Please don't let children watch this show. No, it's rated TVMA. Please don't let children watch this show. Because it is not just a happy little kids show. It is a psychological horror. The genre itself is described as British horror comedy.
Wait, I didn't know British had its own style.
I didn't either, but when I was looking up the exact definition, according to Google, the genre of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is a British horror comedy.
Good for the British?
Good for the British. Let's go. I guess, well, British comedy is kind of its own, it's considered its own culture and flavor of comedy, in a way.
I mean, fair enough.
It makes sense. So, why is this show scary? At first glance, it's just a kid's show. There's nothing scary about it. But very quickly, things start turning weird, is the best way to put it. I will be referencing to try and avoid as much spoilers as possible. I will be referencing mainly the first web series, those first 6 episodes that were released on YouTube back in the 2010s. In the first episode, it starts with them being creative. They're painting, they're drawing, they are making things with sticks. They are throwing glitter around on tables. You know, typical creativity things. I'm always throwing glitter on tables. I don't know about you, but I am. That's true. There's glitter on my desk right now.
Yeah, the amount of glitter you have everywhere. It's great.
It might be a problem, but I don't care.
I love it so much. It's great.
I'm gay, so I'm allowed to put glitter where I want. So, as the episode goes on, things start turning weird, is the best way to describe it. Some of the things that the show does to make it scary and unsettling is they have things like real raw meat will be on the set, while everything else on set is felt and fabric and, like I mentioned, Sesame Street style. And then there'll be real raw meat, or they'll start attacking each other because they need to remind you that they're British.
Mm-hmm.
So they start threatening to kill each other. And it just makes the show unsettling, is the best way to put it. And this fear actually links back into a psychological phobia that is more common today than it actually ever has been recorded, and that is automatanophobia. I don't know if I said that right, but it is the fear of things that look human but aren't. Also known as Uncanny Valley. Uncanny Valley blew up on the internet in late 2023, early 2024. I don't know if you saw those videos that were online of people doing certain makeup to make it look like they were an AI robot, or just Uncanny Valley became a popular trend almost, especially on TikTok, over that period.
I live under a rock. We've established this.
Yeah, the only reason I know about this is because I researched it for this episode.
We both live under rocks.
Yeah, we're Patrick Star. I was researching the phobia, and then it kept coming up with Uncanny Valley, and I looked it up, and I was just like, okay, yeah, that might be a better mainstream way to talk about this. This fear often links to things like dolls. So, what makes it scary to most people psychologically? I'm not going to get into the whole psychology about what our brains recognize as faces, and because it's very, very complicated, because the human brain is very complicated. But in short, it's scary because it's twisting the familiar. There's something so familiar and comforting to many people about a human face, because it means that there's someone with you. But if that face is just ever so slightly turned, it doesn't feel right, and that feels unsettling to people. I'm not scared of dolls. I collect dolls. I mainly Monster High, but I know people who are scared of dolls, and when they walk into my home and they come into my room and they see my giant shelf full of dolls, it scares them. And I do have, most of them are Monster High, so they're not traditional, but I do have a scary doll that my grandmother gifted me. And that is something that people find unsettling because it is so familiar that the second something's turned about it, it doesn't seem right. Another part of what makes this scary is that there's so much pop culture and film about scary dolls. There's Chucky from the movie Child's Play. There's Annabelle from the movie Annabelle. Go watch or listen to our episode about the Annabelle doll. And there's an episode of The Twilight Zone that's about that. And there's tourist attractions about it. And there's just so much media that's feeding you scary dolls. Even Toy Story 4 had scary dolls in it, and they were scary, ventriloquist puppets. There's this fear around the familiar because, like I say, it's comforting. And so when you take something like a children's show and you twist that, because people have deep attachments to children's shows. I don't know about you, but especially with Sesame Street, that was my favorite thing growing up. I watched that show all the time. I collect vintage Sesame Street dolls, actually. And it's such a vivid memory, and so many people learned lessons from shows like Sesame Street. Like The Count helped you learn how to count, and Elmo helped you learn how to be a good friend, and the show taught you how to interact with the world as a whole. So a lot of people have very vivid and clear emotional memories attached to shows like that. So taking that and then turning it into a horror show tricks the brain into a false sense of security. Because it's like, oh, it's a kid's puppet show, but then
it can't hurt me.
Turns. And then they try to kill you. Another similar piece of media, which I will be talking about hopefully at some point in the future, is the ARG, which is called Welcome Home. And it's about a kid's show that's in restoration. And it's another piece of horror media that's absolutely fascinating, and it's very complicated, so that's for another episode. But it's a similar thing of, this is familiar, so I feel safe, and it's comforting, but I'm not safe with it. Did you watch Sesame Street growing up, Cal?
A little bit. I was more of a Wild Kratts kid.
Oh yeah. I used to have like a jacket from Wild Kratts, and you could put the little animal chip in it. It was really weird. But, like, so imagine wild krats, and then, I don't know, I can't remember their name, but they just, like, look dead in the camera and say, I'm behind you, and then you die. Like, imagine that. That's unsettling.
Just a little bit.
That idea, because it's a comforting thing, turning that wrong is scary. There is a branch of automotophobia which is pediophobia, and that is the more specific fear about things that look like humans, so things that are robots, wax figure statues, dolls, and for the record, it translates to fear of little children, not pedophiles. Just want to point that out because they made that very clear in the article that I researched from. They were very worried people think it was the fear of pedophiles, which you should be scared of, but that's not what this fear is. And these things weren't something most people were scared of. From a study of the Smithsonian, people weren't really scared of this until the 19th century when they became more realistic and it became closer linked to what people perceived as human. So now, today with AI, a lot of more people are scared of this kind of thing, and this is also something that links somewhat to the fear of clowns. I do not relate to the fear of clowns at all. Clowns are some of my favorite things, but it's the fear of it not quite being able to be perceived as human, and you can't quite tell what their intentions are because they either seem happy or sad. And it's just this fear of uncertainty and what is around you.
Humans like knowing things.
Exactly. One thing that also makes Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared a bit more complicated is lessons. A big part of children's television and most television is a moral of the story, and it teaches you a lesson. And it's very important for kids, especially, to get that information, to see what is culturally perceived as right and wrong. And the show covers basic lessons, like I mentioned. There's electricity, there's transportation, there's death, there's family, there's food, there's creativity, there's... what else? There's love, there's jobs, all kinds of topics. And it's very important for people to understand the world around us, because humans naturally like to know what's happening. They like to be aware. And something that is an issue is if kids are getting all of that information from television, they might end up in weird places. Like if they have exclusively watched Fox News, there might lead to weird places. Please vote this November. It just gets complicated when you have this idea of moral. So, again, if you have a show that's teaching you morals, and then it starts to stray away from what it's teaching you, it reveals a false sense of security. There was a doctor, I am so sorry, I do not think I pronounce it right, but the name is Dr. Shrestha. They are a child psychologist, and they did a study about children's TV and how much time children spend interacting with a television or screen. And one thing that they commented on was the following. Television programs showing fast-paced or violent content can negatively impact a child's behavior. Sometimes children's programs may also contain content that is not appropriate for their age, resulting in violent and aggressive behavior in some kids, and it can teach them that it's okay to be violent. Again, not all kids respond this way, but it's not it's not a monkey see, monkey do type of deal. But if they're taught, oh, okay, so this is okay, that can get confusing. And the show as a whole has been commented on to be a commentary about that. Let's talk about some of the more interesting pieces that make the world of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared unsettling. So we know why it's unsettling to a lot of people. We know what the show is. So let's get into it. The show itself has always been open to interpretation about, like, what's going on, what morals are being taught. However, when Channel 4 picked up the show, the plot line of the show, if you will, became a lot more clear and evident about what's going on as a whole. The episodes also now have a more congruent storyline. So, for example, in the episode Death, this is a mild spoiler. Duck dies, and he's reported dead. They hold him a funeral. Yada yada yada. He comes back, don't worry. And over that time, we see in future episodes he now has stitches and scars on his stomach from where he was cut open. And that links back to previous episodes linking to food and friendship. And we see that more reoccurring theme. And the show loves to hide Easter eggs in it because it has kind of a cult following. So, for example, there's an episode in the original web series called Time, and there's a clock is the teacher. His name, we call him Tony. And now in the Channel 4 show, you can see in the living room the clock, Tony, is above their fireplace. And in the episode Transportation, we hear him talk, and they got the original voice actors to voice him. And there's little things.
Did they kill Tony and put him on a wall?
Good question, because he doesn't have arms and legs anymore after he gets hung up on the wall. But to be fair, he did try and kill them.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. But as the show goes on, it gets worse, to put it simply. The content gets more disturbing, and the morals get more questionable, and the plot thickens. It's like a good soup when you let it boil. And the last episode of what is referred to as season 2, it's the Channel 4, is called Electricity. And yeah, they talk about electricity. This is powered by electricity. That's powered by electricity. Here's how electricity works. All that stuff. But what's really interesting is a reveal that links back to the episode before, which is Transportation. Now, this is more of a major spoiler for the show, so if you want, I recommend watching the show yourself, even if you haven't, watch it after this. But if you don't want spoilers that are more major, we'll see you next time. So, in the episode Transportation, they drive out and they end up stranded, and it gets very unsettling very quickly. But it cuts to what looks like a mini replica of the house that they live in, which can be seen in the intro. And there's a gloved hand pushing the car that they used to get where they were up to the house, and we hear a voice that we have not heard before say, "No matter what, the journey always ends up back home." And in that episode, we see more things that lead to backstory. The yellow guy has a dream while he sleeps in the car where he is meeting neighbors. They don't have neighbors at their house. And so this concept is very interesting to him, and he saw it on a television program that they like. And as they're there, we see some more disturbing stuff, and they're in a claymation style at this time. And we hear yelling. That's a voice that is presumed to be the same as the person guiding the car back to the house in the later episode. And they are screaming for him to be careful as he runs out into the street and gets hit by a car.
That's fun.
And in the episode Electricity, we get to learn who that person is. First, we find out that yellow guy is powered by batteries, which is very odd, but they change the batteries, and suddenly he becomes a smart boy, and his hair is like flattened and gelled back, and he has green eyes instead of his typical plain black ones. And he ends up going up the stairs, which we've never seen before. As he's walking up these stairs, we see little like paintings, like how some people have family pictures framed and hung as you walk up a staircase. It's like that, except it's him walking up the stairs, implying that this has happened before. We get to meet alternate versions of our favorite characters. We see Duck and Red Guy get more complex and weird and disturbing. But Yellow Guy just keeps walking up the stairs until he makes it to the attic, which is where we meet a character who is named Leslie. And she's a human. She's not a puppet. And it's just a person, which is something that has also never been seen on the show before. Technically, Red Guy is played by a person, like under his suit. He wears a suit because he's just a big character. But this is just a person, just chilling. She is stitched up, and we can see in the room she's in there are windows that have objects that link back to previous episodes. So, for example, there's batteries in one. In another, there's a bag of chips that they were eating in a previous episode about family. And Yellow Guy talks to her. She says some cryptic lines, and we can see her moving figures of Yellow Guy, Red Guy, and Duck around in the house. And she has an exact replica of their house on this piano in the attic. And what happens is Yellow Guy's looking at the duck figure, and he drops it. And she says, "Don't worry, I always have extra." She pulls out a drawer, and we see that there's this drawer just full of figurines of Red Guy and Duck, but we don't see any of Yellow Guy. Some more cryptic things happen. She gives him a book that he ends up shredding, and that we don't know what was in it, but apparently has the answers to what's going on, but that doesn't matter. What the line that a lot of people found that stood out to them was a line from Leslie when they're talking, and she says, "Don't worry about that. You're not my real son. You can't stay here."
That's fun.
And yeah, it's a really fun time. And this whole cryptic thing made a lot of people realize, oh, wait, this isn't just a weird, off-putting horror show. There's something bigger going on here. Because from what it looks like, Leslie is controlling the actions of Red Guy and Duck through these little figures, which means that she makes them gay, but that's a fandom thing. Ignore that. And it's this idea that they are puppets, which, again, I'm going to reference what Baker said, which was in the Channel 4 interview. What about, are they puppets? Are they puppets? And it comes to, again, a bigger idea of, are you being of control and security? Because there's this sense of comfort in the show that is not only given to the viewer in the ways that we have discussed, but the characters' comfort. And they're slightly pushed out of their comfort zone, but it always ends up back at their house, and they're safe. But they're being controlled, so are they safe? It became this whole dilemma, And a big theory is that Leslie is Yellow Guy's mother. And so what happened was that Yellow Guy was a child and he got hit by a car, causing him to go into a coma, and he's in the hospital, which is why he's powered by batteries, because he's on life support. And Leslie is his mother and is playing house in a way to console this grief that she's feeling, and pretends that Yellow Guy is her son for some connection. And that would explain the line, "You're not my real son," because it's just her projection of him. But we don't know. It's a really complex show for such... At first, when you watch it, it gets just, oh, silly little horror puppets, hi, I love you. And then it's, oh my god, they're really messed up, I love you. Oh my god, the show's really messed up, I love it. It's kind of the gradual progression of the show.
I think Leslie has too much time on her hands.
Huh?
I think Leslie has too much time on her hands.
Probably. It's kind of hinted at that she's a god in this universe. She's like a god figure, so maybe she needs to talk to Tony about time. Get it?
Yes.
Because he's from the Time episodes. I'm so funny. And the whole show is just like a big ball of confusion and horror and comedy. And it's very funny. In general, I find it very funny. There's during the episode Jobs, Duck just walks. They're trying to talk to people in the workplace, and he's like, "That's not how you assert yourself in a workplace. Give it here." And he takes a boom mic and he goes, "Attention freaks, it's me." And I quote that line way too often. It's one of my favorite. And another amazing line is from Yellow Guy and Red Guy, when instead of doing the dishes, Yellow Guy is just putting the dishes, just throwing them in the bin. And Red Guy's like, "Are you just throwing the dishes in the bin?" And he's like, "No." "Yeah." "Screw you." Basically, it's great. So, now, don't hug me, I'm scared. Here's the pop quiz. Are you ready?
Wait, what?
It's a pop quiz!
No, I'm running on 4 hours of sleep. You can't do this to me.
If you're listening to what I said, you'll pass. What is the clock's name?
Tony.
Good. What genre is the show marked under on Google?
British horror comedy.
Good. Who lives in the attic?
Leslie with too much time.
Leslie with two... That's what you name her?
She just seems a little bored. Like, she needs friends.
It sounds like she's a grieving mother. Maybe she does need friends. Friends help with grief. Anyway, what was that? How many episodes are there in total?
You have the 6 first episodes on YouTube, and then you said 2 seasons? Each with 6?
The second, there's what they call the, Channel 4 is called the second season. So
and
season 1's the web series, and then season 2 is the Channel 4
So there was
show.
6 in season 1, and there was 6 in season 2? You didn't say how many episodes there was in season 2.
I did.
Can someone check that? I feel like...
I did. I said it at the beginning. I said it like 20 minutes ago.
I'm gonna go with saying that there was 6, so 12 episodes.
That's correct. What was the other one? Why is the show scary?
Because it's too close to being comforting, but just that one step away, triggering people's fear that I'm not going to try to remember the name of, because that's not fair.
Just call it Uncanny Valley. You can just call it Uncanny Valley.
Yes.
You pass.
See, I'm good. It's great.
Yay. What do you rate today's episode of Ghostly's Geek Out?
It was fun.
Alright. Alright. Do you have a closing comment?
Get Leslie friends. You can do this, guys.
She might kill you, but try to be friends with Leslie. We believe in you.
It sounds like Leslie is a cryptid now.
Yeah! Okay, if you guys need a refresher on the cryptid rules, listen to our cryptid episodes. There's a playlist on our YouTube. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Bury Me Alive podcast. As a reminder, I'm your host, Ghostly.
And I'm your host, Technicality.
Thank you so much for listening. Just listening to our show is a huge support to us, and it means so much that you guys listen. But if you want to support us in other ways, there's ways you can do that. If you are listening on YouTube, press all the buttons that you know about, subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment and say something nice because we like to hear your guys' thoughts. And if you are on Spotify, go ahead and rate us, so that way more people see our silly little thoughts and interact with us through our Q&A and poll features because we like to hear your silly little thoughts. We hope to hear and see you guys again sometime soon. Goodbye!
Goodbye!
God, it felt good to say that again.